In this video, I will show you how you can use rootsTrust to work with non-biological relationships. First of all, what do I mean by a non-biological relationship? Non-biological relationships are relationships between individuals who are not related to one another, such as friends, enemies, adversaries, business associates, surrogate parents, and so forth. rootsTrust supports the following types of non-biological relationships. By supports, I mean that rootsTrust allows you to establish these relationships between persons, and once having done so, you will be able to navigate between these persons the way you can navigate between spouses or between a child and its parents. So the types supported are associations, aliases, event primary participant to event secondary participant relationships, that's a mouthful to be sure, child to adoptive parents relationships, child to foster parents relationships, and child to guardian relationships. Let's take a look at each one of them individually. First of all, associations. This is a GEDCOM term for any relationship, biological or otherwise, that you wish to establish between two persons. You can establish a relationship and name the relationship or the association type. The next one is aliases. This is another GEDCOM term for suspected alter egos. In other words, the persons linked by an alias relationship are suspected of being one and the same person, but proof is missing. The next type is event primary participant to event secondary participant relationships. The child is the primary participant of a birth event, while a midwife or delivering physician would be a secondary participant. In rootsTrust, it is possible to identify a secondary participant by name only. In order to establish a primary to secondary participant relationship in rootsTrust, the secondary participant must also have person status in the database. So, if the secondary participant is a person in the database, then you will be able to navigate to the secondary participant from the primary participant and vice versa. So the next type supported is child to adoptive parents relationships. When you create an adoption event in rootsTrust, you are prompted to identify the adoptive parent or parents, who will then be treated as secondary participants of the association event, the adoption event, excuse me. The next type, or next two and next final two types are child to foster parents relationships and child to guardian relationships. Both of these work the same as the child to adoptive parent relationships that I just discussed. Now let's take a look how you can set up these relationships with rootsTrust. I have undone some relationships in a copy of my personal database so that I can recreate them for you in this video. Before I create an association, I would like to show you two associations that are in the Abraham Lincoln database that comes with rootsTrust. So if we look at the left panel buttons, we see that the associations button is announced in green, which indicates that there are associations for this individual. So I click that button and we see the table contains two associations. The first one for John Wilkes Booth, and the association type is assassination. The second one is for Stephen Douglas, and the association type is political rivalry. Down below we have notes. Since the John Wilkes Booth association is selected, the notes in the box apply to that association. If I click the Stephen Douglas association, then the contents of the notes box changes to correspond to the selected association. So if I double click this association, we're transported to Stephen A. Douglas's page, and we'll see that he has one or more associations. If we click that button, we see that we have the Abraham Lincoln association there. So it's a two-way street, an association. And the same notes are displayed for Stephen Douglas as were for Abraham Lincoln. If we double click this, we go back to Abraham Lincoln, and there we see the same notes again. Now we select the John Wilkes Booth Association, click on that, we're transported to John Wilkes Booth page, and we see an association with Abraham Lincoln. So that's that. So now let's change databases. And here we have Robert Newcomb, one of my ancestors, who acquired a considerable amount of land by marrying a widow around 1730 in Talbot County, Maryland. His name and that of a Thomas Newcomb appeared on property tax records for some of this land for several years, where they were listed as the heirs of Thomas Newcomb. I therefore assumed they were brothers, but have never been able to prove that. So I linked them as possible kin in an association. So let's set up that association. First, I click on the association's left panel button, which you see is gray, has no announcement, which indicating that there are no associations recorded for this individual yet. So we click on that button, and then I click on the Add Association Sleepy button, which invokes a Swiss Army knife type form used to identify the associated person. The same form is used to add a parent, a spouse, or a child. It allows you to define a new person or select an existing person from the database in one of several ways. So I can optionally specify an association type using the combo box on the upper left of the form. I'll select possible kin. If I hadn't been able to find an appropriate selection, I could have simply typed in one that suited me. This is an editable combo box. So I could select Thomas Newcomb, the suspected brother, from an alphabetical list of all persons in the database, or identify him via his person ID by selecting attribute, and person ID is the first in the attribute list. If I could do this if I knew his person ID, and I do. If he weren't in my database, I could simply enter him at this time by clicking on the Define Radio button and entering the name pieces into this form, and selecting and clicking OK. And then he would be entered into the database, and the association would be established between him and Robert Newcomb. But I'm going to select him via his person ID, which is 2926. In order to exit this form, the OK button must be enabled. As you can see, it's not. And the reason for that is that I have typed in a person ID here which has not yet been validated. So the test button becomes active when you enter a value in here. I click the test button, it verifies that that's a good person ID and displays the name of the person, which is Thomas Newcomb. So we know we have the right guy. So we click on OK, and now we see that there's an entry in the associations table for Thomas Newcomb, and the association type is possible kin. I'm going to select some text and do a copy and paste into the notes field here to save some time, and that's the text that describes why I believe these two gentlemen were related. So now I can double click this entry, and we are then transported to Thomas Newcomb. The associations button is not yet illuminated. Now it is once I click on it, and there you see the notes that I typed in or pasted in, and the association with Robert Newcomb. Okay, The next type I'm going to demonstrate is the alias. Now, Robert Newcomb had a granddaughter by the name of Mary, whom he mentioned in his will of 1790. I found a 1795 marriage in Talbot County, Maryland, between a Polly Newcomb and a William Gibson. Since I know that there was only one Newcomb family in Talbot County at that time, I suspected that Polly and Mary were the same person, but I had no proof. So I linked the two with an alias relationship. Later I found the proof and was able to remove the alias and merge the two of them. So if I go to I didn't type that right. Okay. There she is. Okay. Now I'm going to generate an alias between her and Polly Newcomb. There she is, Polly Newcomb. Oh yes, and I have some notes to paste in there for this relationship, and that's all there is to it. The procedure is almost identical to the procedure for establishing an association. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is a primary to secondary participant relationship. Alfred William Brooke, go to him. Wrong one, that's his grandfather. Okay, Alfred William Brooke and his wife, Anne Julia, were witnesses to the marriage of Alfred's sister, Charlotte Susan. I did not undo this relationship since I will be creating a similar one in just a second. So here we notice that Alfred William Brooke has a tab for secondary events. And in this table, we find one event for each of the marrying parties. His sister, Charlotte. So we click on that, and the event for Charlotte Susan Brooke, the marriage event, is loaded, and here is displayed. And here you see that one of the witnesses is Alfred William Brooke. So if we click on that, we go back to Alfred William Brooke. So that's the type of navigation that's available for primary to secondary event relationships. So now we move on to a child to adoptive parents relationship. And I need to change people here. Elsa Bachert. Her mother died when she was a small child, and she was adopted by a married couple, William and Caroline Emmerich, around 1900 in New London, Connecticut. So to create an adoption event for her, I do the following. I click on the Add Event Sleepy button to load the event selection form. Then I select Early Life, click on the Adoption Radio button. Okay. And now I can select between a person and a family. Well, this is going to be a family, so I type in EMM to get to the Emmerichs, and there they are. That's his German birth name. He came to the States as a small child and went by the name of William in this country. Okay, so there we have a birth event. It was about 1900, and it was in New London, Connecticut. So we see that there is now an adopted child tab next to the birth child tab. And if we click on the adopted child tab, we see the adopting father and adopting mother. So if we click on the father, we see that William Emmerich now has a secondary events tab. And what do we find in that tab? An entry for the adoption of Elsa Bachert. We click on that and we go back to Elsa Bachert. So if I select this event and delete it, yes, I want to delete it, then all the goodies go away. So that tab disappears, and if we go back to William Emmerich, see the secondary event tab is gone. Everything has been deleted. So this concludes the video on non-biological relationships. If you haven't already done so, check out the other rootsTrust videos on YouTube or via the demo videos menu item on rootsTrust's main menu.